Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my usual podcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played during his career 69 NHL playoff games. And the reason that's important today is we're going to talk about the playoffs, and I want to get Tom's perspective on some things that are kind of going on in the postseason. And I think because he's been through it, I think he's got a pretty good understanding of the way things work. And Tom, I want to start with the Vegas Golden Knights and the Vancouver Canucks. And yeah, it was a great game last night. Yeah. And let me start by saying that, Robin Lehner is not responsible for the Canucks victory last night. Like, the Canucks just played a terrific game. And, 40 shot blocks. Like, they went from a team that I thought was last night a momentum team, a persevering team, a skilled team, and everything. But last night, they I thought produced sort of a classic NHL playoff victory. Doing whatever it takes, in order to win. Now, the reason I brought up Robin Lehner is I think now going into Game 3, they have a decision to make. Like, even though it wasn't Robin Lehner's fault, you're sitting there with a Hall of Famer, Marc-Andre Fleury, who was on your bench, who hasn't really played much because Robin Lehner has played so well and so effectively. So my question to you is, as a player on that team, how do you view that? Are you waiting for Fleury to come in and be the guy, or have you gotten now used to Robin Lehner back there and he's played well? I mean, those goals last night, like the Pettersson goal, how do you stop that? That was nice. The Toffoli goal was, just a goal mouth pass and into an empty net. Like, I don't fault Leonard. So how do you view what the decision that DeBoer is now facing?
Tough one with all this going on. And well, in the old days, and obviously it's not the old days anymore. It was, you had your one guy, and if he had a bad night, you knew you were still coming back to him. I remember I think we told the story before. I remember Billy Smith with the Islanders. We beat him bad at Madison Square Garden. And he got interviewed after the game, and there was no question he was playing the next game. And I think they had Chico Resch as their backup at that time too, who was a very good goaltender. But he talked like, I'm going to regroup and I'll be back for the game tomorrow. So there's no question about it. Now you don't see that as much. Coaches are not afraid to change goaltenders. So you see it a lot now. And especially in that case where you're right, Marc-Andre Fleury is a Stanley Cup winner, a Hall of Fame goaltender, and people love him too, his personality. Then you add to it I thought, I'm careful how I term this, but his agent makes that post on Twitter with a picture of a sword going through the back of Marc-Andre Fleury, assuming he's getting stabbed in the back by Pete DeBoer. So you add to that because you don't want to look like you're reacting to that. And that's not the reason you're making your decision. You're making the decision goes what is right for your team. I mean, for me, I'd go back with Marc-Andre Fleury. I agree with you. I don't think it's and the reason I do it as much as anything, I think maybe the loss will do this anyways, but I think for the first time, Vegas got a little bit ahead of themselves. They beat Vancouver so bad, like physically beat them bad too in the game one. And I thought Vegas kind of had that attitude that they would just go out there and do whatever they wanted to do, push them around and do whatever. And they'd win the game last night. So maybe that will wake them up. But very often you change goaltenders like that'll wake the team up as well. So tough decision by I don't know the temperament of Lehner. Can he handle getting, not playing, and does he lose his confidence? And that's part of the equation too. But listen, they're big boys. He's been through a lot of stuff in his life and in his career. It's well documented, so he should be able to handle it. But I would go back with Marc-Andre Fleury.
Yeah, me too. And you raise a good point there. Because of what he's gone through, I wonder if he just looks at this as like, this is just hockey. Yeah. We'll sort this out a little later on today. But what he's gone through in terms of coming to grips with his life and so forth. But I want to go back to Alan Walsh, that he's the agent that Tom was speaking of. He's Marc-Andre Fleury's agent. He represents many or a good chunk of players around the NHL. And I know him pretty well. And I actually appreciate that he is he stands up for the concussion issue, which I think is important. He wants to see everyone be more vigilant in protecting players against concussion. That's one of his things. He's a former prosecutor, and he acts that role as a prosecutor. Like, he's very aggressive on Twitter. Not everybody likes him. But one thing he always does, and not sometimes his clients don't like it. I remember a conversation with one of them, is he stands up for his players. And, sometimes, it goes overboard. Like, I haven't talked to anybody who thought what Allen did was by, using that little image, was a good idea, because, the prevailing thought was, poor Mark now has to, hear that in the dressing room. Most of the guys, I'm sure, were just, kidding him about it, because, to be honest, they know how it all works. Everybody knows who Alan Walsh is and, what he stands for. And that he is a guy that will do those kind of things in the name of his client. But still, I'm sure it wasn't, all that pleasant for Mark to have to, sort of explain what that was all about. And I'm sure he had nothing to do with it. That's the amazing part of it. But, you made a good point before. He's also very popular, he being Fleury, with his teammates. So I'm sure everybody kind of had a good laugh about it. Yeah. But it's, probably wasn't a laughing matter around the league. But, you're a former agent.
Yep.
Like,
Kevin froze up on us here. We'll give a second. It's probably his computer is tired from all the use he had on the weekend from the wedding. So Kevin's leading me into what I think of what Alan Walsh did. And I'm all for, as an agent, backing up your client and supporting him. But there's a way to do it, and it's not in a public forum like that. Alan Walsh has done this before. I can't remember before. I think there's a player for the Montreal Canadiens he did it too. But if you want to back your player up, there's no problem with that. I mean, you need to go one-on-one with the general manager, pick up the phone, go see him, sit in the room with him, and talk to them about directly. It's this public forum that he does this. We lost Kevin here; he'll come back. But to do it in a public forum like that, you run the risk of embarrassing the player. You've got this player, Marc-Andre Fleury. He's very popular. He's built a career off being a real team guy. And then you do that public. Again, if Marc-Andre Fleury has a problem with not playing, what should happen is that Marc-Andre Fleury goes into the coach and has a meeting one-on-one with the coach, and they have a discussion, which I'm sure they did. Peter Boer is a real class guy that way, and I'm sure he would have treated Marc-Andre Fleury properly. So I'm sure they had their own meeting. And for Alan Walsh to do that, it's just kind of that whole relationship that Mark Fleury is so good at building with his team, his teammates and coaches and everything over the years. So that's unfortunate he did that. We'll see if I think the problem is that what happened here is Kevin got off because Ron Greshner again was picking on our hair or lack thereof. And so that's probably why Kevin got off. Again, Ron is persistent on this, and I think Kevin just probably had enough. One thing we need to do too, guys, while we're waiting for Kevin to come back on here, we got some things to take care of. Actually, Ron and I were talking today because I can't get away from Ron. He wants to talk all the time. Our former teammate and good friend, Barry Beck, I know everybody was aware of what's happened with him and his son. They had a little bit of a wake for him yesterday, and I want to make sure everybody, we sent him messages to make sure he understood that we're all thinking of him. So I know everybody out there is still going through a very tough time with the death of his son. All right, what are we going to talk about here? The Boston Bruins and Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't know how many people saw that game. Oh, here he comes back here.
Yeah, I think they call that a brownout.
Is that right? You lost your power.
Yeah. Well, it's humid here, and I think everybody just has their air conditioning on, and my little Hamlin, I guess, couldn't handle all the power.
Right, we're still live anyways, too. So I explained to people probably what was happening was it was Ron Gresham was picking on us about our hair. as usual. So that's probably what happened. So just, when you were gone, I did discuss the Alan Walsh thing and my feeling. I love the fact that somebody wants to stick up for the player like that. The agent sticks out. I think that's a vital role of being an agent, but there's a way to do it. I think probably I would assume knowing Marc-Andre Fleury and Pete DeBoer, they probably already had a conversation about the situation of who's playing and why. So for Alan Walsh to do that in a public forum, like if you want to call the general manager, the coach, and rip into him, and usually an agent isn't calling a coach, he's calling the general manager. If you want to have a conversation with them, that's fine. But do it publicly like that. It's just I don't know. I get it. I know Alan. I don't know him at all, so it's kind of unfair for me to judge him. But I get the feeling it's more. My concern, anyways, is it's more for him. He's not publicly kind of advertising how he's going to fight for his players. And now a new player goes, well, that's the guy I want because he's fighting for me. Yeah. Again, I don't know him, so I shouldn't judge him, but that's my concern.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of his players do indeed appreciate how he battles, publicly
like that.
Well, I remember talking to, I know I shouldn't use his name, but I remember talking to one who, found it amusing that Alan was, doing that. So yeah, it's, I don't know. It's it's not my style, and I certainly wouldn't do that. And I don't know. I mean, have you ever had to call up a GM and then privately, obviously I know you never did anything publicly, but privately, have you ever called the GM and had to, lay into him for what you thought was mistreatment of your client?
Yeah, I mean, quite a few times, but you have a conversation with them, like trying to find out, okay, why is this happening, and then get the explanation for it. And there's no explanation for it if it's just, but rarely did I ever get a player that was mistreated. And again, you think of Marc-Andre Fleury, he's really not being mistreated. I mean, they made a decision that they think is right for the team, and it's go.
Yeah. Although, mistreat is probably the wrong word, but I think one of the points that I bet Alan would make is that Robin Lehner is an interloper here. Could be. He's come in, he's going to play a few games, and then he's going to go elsewhere as an unrestricted free agent. Marc-Andre Fleury is with this team now and tomorrow, right. And I'm sure that Alan would say to them, what kind of message is this to send to your guy?
Yeah, I hear you. But again, they're getting paid to win. They're not getting paid to work.
Yeah, no. I'm not suggesting for a minute that Jeff DeBoer doesn't have the right to play whoever he thinks is going to give him the best chance of winning. In fact, I would criticize him if he didn't do that. Yeah, totally. I was just trying to explain, try to get into Alan Walsh's head a little bit, which is a little scary.
Right. Yeah. Like in the whole backstabbing thing, like I would assume with a player of stature, any player, but a player of stature, Marc-Andre Fleury, that Pete DeBoer and maybe even George McPhee and Kelly McCrimmon all have talked to him and say, listen, here's what's going on, because he is such an important part of the franchise. I would assume they already talked to him. So to portray it as he's being backstabbed, I have a hard time believing that that's what was going on. Was he unhappy? Was he privately unhappy that they made the decision? Absolutely. Marc-Andre Fleury is a competitor, and I'm sure he wanted to play, But I loved his comments after, too. He was like, listen, I'm here to win. And he acknowledged that Alan Walsh was doing that to fight for him, but I'm here to win. So
he played it perfectly. And so did Robin Lehner. He said that he and Marc-Andre Fleury had a laugh at it, and really it's Alan Walsh that looks bad, is the way he sort of phrased it. That wasn't the exact quote, but that was the inference.
A little graphic too. I mean, he had the blood coming out, and it's like, geez.
Yeah, I actually, believe it or not, I never saw the tweet. Yeah, I've just heard about it. But anyway, let's move on. I want to talk about some other series because there's so much going on. Yeah. And I wonder too if this get your thoughts on this. This is officially the second round, but if you're the Islanders, you're playing your third series, and I wonder if this isn't the key series. And I say that because you're starting out now, and you're telling yourself, if you count this series, we got to win 3 more series in order to win the cup. And the mental toughness that requires, and the bubble, the novelty of that's worn off. Like maybe it was a little fun because of unique starting out. It's not fun anymore, and you haven't seen your family, and The end is not in sight. And I think this has got to be, I believe it was Rick Bowness. I think it was him that he made, no, he didn't say specifically about this, but he said, there is some, you need a little mental fortitude right about now to try to, kind of work through this. And I can see that. Your thoughts?
Oh, especially like if you're up 2-0 in a series, I would say it's easier because you said, okay, well, we're going to win this series, all right? So you suck it up and get ready for the next one. I mean, obviously, you got to finish that series off. But if you're struggling, like if you're Colorado right now and you're down 2-0, which is a huge surprise by that's going to be the mental struggle, right? To say, oh, we're not going to win this series anyways. It's just, I'm not saying they would quit, but I mean, it's easier. It's easier to now say, oh God, I'm tired of this bubble. But if you're winning, you say, okay, I can put up with the bubble. But for a team like Colorado to be down 2-0, man, that's a tough mental struggle, right? To say now, okay, first of all, we're going to fight through this becomes a 7-game series, and now we don't even know for sure if we're behind the 8 ball as it is. So it's a tough one, but yeah, I would. It is a unique situation, that's for sure. The mental struggle has got to be tough.
I want to give you a little bit of credit.
Yes.
You were the first to kind of identify that maybe the Canucks were more than just a hot team. Like, because they're really a very young team in terms of their key players are really inexperienced. And I've crossed over it, and it was really in the opening round when it was pretty clear to me that these younger players don't know what they don't know. And they're just, playing on raw energy and skill. And, but they showed me something last night. Like, this is a very, very impressive team. Now, I've been thinking that Vegas is going to win it all. So for them to step up and beat Vegas the way they did last night, and in the manner in which they did it.
And especially how bad game 1 was, like physically. They dominated. That was like men playing with boys in game 1.
Yeah. And how about Bo Horvat? I don't think, I've talked a lot about Quinn Hughes, and of course we all know how great Pedersen is, and Besser's got the shot, but Bo Horvat has become like such a great leader. And of course he's got 8 goals. So he's leading by example as well. But hey, look, if they end up beating Vegas, I can't say that I'm going to be shocked.
Yeah, totally.
I picked Vegas, but the Canucks are playing exceptional hockey, and they've got a lot of talented players.
And a lot of character players too. Look at Hughes and Pedersen, like not very big guys, and they were getting hammered in game 1. And it kind of, I hate to say it like this, there was a picture of Hughes sitting on the bench at one point. You almost thought he was crying in game 1. And I think he was just so frustrated in himself because he wasn't playing well. But to be able to regroup, because that's hard. Like you're a young player, you're a skilled player. Like especially in those 2 players' case, Pedersen and Hughes. That Vegas is coming out after you physically. They're wanting to dominate you. They're going to pound you every time. And to know that you now got to come back out and play again, and the same thing's going to happen, and say, listen, I'm not accepting that. Like they didn't just play. They just didn't just get through the game. They went out and they won. They took the hits. They took whatever was coming their way, and they did what it had to do to win. So yeah, they're an impressive team. But like you said, not just the talent part of it, but the character part of it. That's going to be a huge learning experience for them too. Fighting back like that. So no matter what happens in a series, if they keep the effort up and the character part of the game up like that they're doing well. How about real quick? I just want to mention that. How about our boy? Did you go call the NHL and have Tortorella fined $25,000? Was that you?
No, but I understand why they did. We've talked about it before. It's it's just disrespecting the game. I don't like it, and I like John quite a bit. So, but you got to call him out when he does that. Like what? And I saw, I don't remember where, but one of the members of the media was just talking about all the things he had to say about Sheldon Keefe, and whether he have said that if Keefe's the way the media had treated him after the Maple Leafs lost. Would you have said the same thing if the Maple Leafs had beaten him? I don't think so.
Yeah,
So
I wonder. I know he gets frustrated, and Tortorella gets frustrated with the media, but it's almost like he's not even giving anybody a chance. It's like he's already frustrated with the media before it even happens, right? Like,
and that's just part of the job. And some people say, well, would you rather he went out there and spit out some cliches and just did, what some of the guys go through. Well, look, that's the job. And
Right.
you come out and, I don't care, every coach, when he's spitting out cliches, occasionally will give you a nugget that, offers some insight. And, this is your way to connect with fans, and fans are the game.
Right.
And I don't understand why coaches don't see it that way. They're all making great livings, and it's just a way for you to say what you want to say, to explain the team to the fans who essentially pay your salary. I mean, they're not stockholders, but that the reason we have hockey is that the fans turn it into a multi-million-dollar game. So why don't you just
Look at Bill Belichick. Look at Bill Belichick up with the New England Patriots.
I say the same thing about him.
Yeah, but I guess he doesn't seem to take the heat. I mean, he gives those cliche answers and he says nothing.
Yeah,
but I guess he's not being rude, right? At least he's answering the question, right? So,
well, he can be rude, let's admit it. But and John can answer questions too. He just somehow just gets in a snit sometimes, and
he's on a roll with it too, right? It's like he'll answer questions for a while, then all of a sudden, like he's just constantly, like every game for a while, he seems like he's aggravated with the media.
Well, yeah, he gets aggravated. But I'll tell you what, and I've said this before on this show,
right.
If you're leaning against the wall with John Tortorella, just you and him, talking about league issues or stuff, like he's terrific.
Right.
And I've had so many good experiences with John Tortorella. It's just in that podium situation. And I would tell him the same thing. If he was on this program, I would explain to him why I think he owes it to the game to get up there and answer questions. Now, and I'm sure people have said exactly what I've said to him. And I don't think it matters. But he talks a lot about respect. And it bugs me because I think his actions are disrespectful to the game and not disrespectful to media. We're kind of accustomed to that, but I think this is part of it, the part of it. And, if I'm an owner, I want my coach not only to coach, but to sell the game and to be a face for my fan base.
Right.
And now I will argue for John in this and say, hey, I'm sure some of the fans love that, but he's not giving them any information.
Right.
He's not, he's just there. He's creating a clown show, entertainment. And,
it's almost like people are looking forward to the John Tortorella press conference, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody wants
the hour.
Right.
Yeah. Here comes the he's going to do his angry man routine. Let's watch again. It's good. It's a good routine.
And so like we talked about it before, the people that know him, he's a great guy. Like he's a dog lover, family lover, all that kind of stuff. But the anger isn't just with the media too. I mean, remember the times where he almost went in the Vancouver, whose dressing room did he almost go into?
Yeah, I
Calgary.
Yeah, maybe I have a vague memory.
And then he's gotten mad like during games. I remember the big brawl when Pete DeBoer was coaching the New Jersey Devils, and they had a brawl right at the start of the game between the Rangers and Devils, and he was yelling and screaming at Pete DeBoer, trying to blame him for the brawl.
Yeah.
So it's like there's this. I almost get the sense sometimes that it's a contrived anger, though. Like in those cases, like he's pretending he's mad at DeBoer, but he was the one that put his tough guys out on the ice too. He didn't have to put his tough guys out on the ice. So I don't think his anger is contrived. I think he boils over a little bit. Really? Okay.
That's my feeling because most of the time he's very reasonable.
Speaking of that, too, we don't want to revel in somebody else's bad news, but maybe we do. Mike Milbury continued to make some unsavory comments and is now stepped away, or either he's been removed for the rest of the playoff. So.
Yeah, no, that's just it's and it's the time. Like if you're a broadcaster now, you have to watch everything that you say. I just read it recently about the baseball broadcaster Brenneman, who didn't apparently realize he was on a hot mic and said something he shouldn't have, and I don't even know how that was reconciled.
I don't know. I don't think it has been yet. All right, so our girl Susan Brooks here. Tom, using your theory, was Tampa Bay better without McDonough? See,
Oh my gosh.
we love Susan. He is good. He's an
Yeah.
intelligent
Oh,
man.
by the way, I have mentioned your theory to people around the league, and you're just taking a huge beating over this.
They
So
don't understand. They don't understand. They don't understand the game like I do. That's
no, I know. Yeah, no, I there's and
Yeah.
you know the people I talk to, and they might argue that they do know the game as well.
I like to have that debate though. That's it, but it is interesting though, right? Like to be honest with you, I'm not a huge Ryan McDonough fan to start with. Now, he was here in New York. I've done a couple of events with him as a person, great guy and everything. But I think he's one of those guys that gets kind of caught in that trap where people have this view that he's maybe better than he really is. Doesn't mean he's not good. But and I think he gets himself in trouble, and he did a couple of times in the Columbus series where he tries to do too much out there sometimes. But he just sticks to his game. He's a really good player. But he got who was it? Patrice Bergeron stripped the puck away from him for one goal there last game because I thought he was trying to do too instead of just moving the puck out of his zone. He was trying to do too much and carry it. So, but again,
you're definitely right. I would say this. I am a McDonough fan. I think he was a very effective defenseman for a lot of years, but not so much this year. And in these playoffs, I thought, boy, he had a couple of games there where, you could see his flaws. Were in the spotlight on some pretty, big goals.
Right. And it's always when he's trying to do too much, right? When he just very effective player. And that's, I go back to the old Herb Brooks saying, like he said, like if you get the puck, give it to somebody else. It was kind of funny at the time, but it really was it was an important part of my career when I got to become that kind of player to realize, listen, here's my role and stick to my role. Don't try to do something else.
Yeah. He's like he's not a great offensive player, but he's always had a good first pass.
Yeah.
Coming out of the zone. But I see your point that if he thinks he's more than he is, then all the things he did well, like, he was always well positioned. He's pretty good one-on-one defender, and not pretty good, real good he has been. But that series, by the way, I just think it's going to go 7 and it's going to be fun. Like those are two really good teams. And I've just enjoyed watching both of those teams. And, the Bruins top line got going.
Man,
when they're going, that's just fun hockey.
Yeah. Did you see there's a press conference with Chara and McAvoy? Did you see that one?
I didn't.
It was funny because Chara's up there and he's huge, right? McAvoy looks like this tiny little boy. And he's McAvoy's being very respectful and talking about how lucky he is to play with Chara and everything. And they both kind of blew each other a kiss. Like it was so far. Like McAvoy went on so much about how great it was to be playing with Chara. It was a pretty funny moment. So here we go.
Oh, that's great. What I love about McAvoy, and I followed his career because he was an American player, so he was going to be on World Juniors and all that. I think what makes him great is he doesn't worry about the errors. And I've learned from hanging out with you I've thought a lot about this because you mentioned this before, is that great players do make errors,
yes,
but they don't let them bother them. And you talked about how Larry Robinson would make plays that if anybody else tried them, coach would be all over him, and that Ray Bourque, would try, a spectacular pass and it'd be picked off, and he'd never give a second thought. Well, I find McAvoy is a risk taker too, and I think they're calculated risk. Like I think he gives some thought to what he's doing, and he doesn't take risks just to take risk. I think he knows kind of what he's doing, but he's not bothered by him. Like when he first came up in the league, he just played like he was a 10-year veteran. Like
he was a confident player when he first came up.
Yeah.
Yes, so you can say cocky.
Yeah, I think you got to have a little cockiness, don't you, to be a top player?
To play like that, if you're going to be a guy that the team counts on to make things happen, like for me, it was different. I still had to be confident, but I was a guy that had to stop the other team from doing things, right? He's got to make things happen for his team, and he also has to stop the other team from doing things too. What I like about him too is he's smart. Like he's learned how to like time and place, right? It's great to take risks, but you don't want to take a risk, last minute of a game and you're up by a goal. You don't take risks then. And if you're, last minute of a game and you're down by a goal, yes, take the risk. You're the one we want taking the risks. And if you screw up, don't worry about it. Get right back into play. I like him a lot. His attitude, his play. That hit he had on Stahl there in the last series, man, stepped up and that was good.
Yeah, he's spunky and he's got a little bite to him.
Yep.
I think that's tricky to be a coach too. When you have a guy who's, has got raw ability and is a risk taker where, you don't want to rein it in so much that he loses his effectiveness. And yet you can't afford as a coach to allow him just to, cost your team with a risk at the wrong time. So I think that's got to be, I've never asked a coach this, or if I have, I've forgotten that I've asked him. But, like how hard it must be to, how far do you, bring a guy back?
Right. And again, you got to remember too, that you can't be coming across like he's getting favorite treatment. The other guys have to know that he's being disciplined. Sure. But at the same time, Ron Greshner wasn't going to play like Tom Laidlaw, and Tom Laidlaw wasn't going to play like Ron Greshner. Ron Greshner's a puck carrier. He's got to move it. I've got to be the guy that, always makes the right play. Ron Greshner is one of those guys that had to make things happen. So I think it's that understanding that everybody's got a role, and your role is your role, and play it. And if your role is different, like the rest of the players, like, Chara, and I think what's so great to coach a team like Boston too, I was thinking about with Cassidy, and I like him as a coach a lot. But when you've got Chara and Patrice Bergeron in your locker room, it's like you've got like your leadership is sitting in the locker room right there, right? And they're not just leaders, but it's like the way they play and carry themselves. It's just it's got to be. Again, I don't want to take any credit away from the coaches, but it's got to be a lot easier when you get those guys in the locker room.
But don't you? And I've mentioned this before, and I think you liked it. I've always seen it like in the James Bond stories, the 007, which means you have the license to kill indiscriminately, and no one's going to question you.
Right.
If you're sitting in a locker room, don't you know who the guys in your team are that are 00? Ray Bourque was a 00 agent, and Larry Robinson was, so they could do what they want. Like, no one sat in the Edmonton Oilers dressing room, and if Wayne Gretzky wanted to take a chance, they'd be upset that the coach was favoring him. They'd say, well, that's Gretzky. He's going to do what he's going to do.
And when it's a Gretzky, it's so obvious. But there are other times where maybe it's not as obvious. Like Pierre LaRouche had the famous line, they pay me $250,000 to score goals. If they want me to back check, they can pay me another $250,000, right? So it takes and he was a great teammate. But if somebody says something like that, that's where the leadership in the room has got to say, listen, Pierre, that's Pierre's job, to score goals. That's who Pierre LaRouche is. Like a younger player coming up may say, well, why is Pierre getting away with that stuff and I'm not? Although we do have to remember the funny story, Jay Miller, the one time in LA when Wayne Gretzky stayed on about 5 minutes at the end of a period, and Jay Miller decided he was going to lecture him in the locker room. Did I tell you that story?
I'm liking it already.
God, it's funny. We were playing one of those games at home, and we weren't playing very well. And we had a veteran team. That's when we had Larry Robinson, Jay Miller, Marty McSorley, Dave Taylor, myself, and Timmy Waters was there. And Wayne had stayed out, as he often did. If he thought he could get something going for the team, he was going to stay out there for a long shift. And everybody just understood that's Wayne. He's not being selfish. He's doing it because he thinks he's got something going. He's going to help the team. So it's right at, it must be like a 3 or 4 minute shift, and it's right at the end of the period. So we come in and everybody's mad at themselves and each other. Come on, guys, let's get going. And Jay was a funny guy, and Wayne really liked Jay a lot and everything. But it was so Jay says, yeah, if everybody didn't stay out there or people didn't stay out there for those 3 or 4 minute shifts, we might be doing a lot better. Well, obviously that's Wayne. I mean, there's no question he's saying it about Wayne. And the room just went dead silent. It was funny. And Wayne rarely did this, but he was a little bit mad. And he threw his gloves and stick down in front of Jay's stall. And he said, listen, if you think you can do any better, you go ahead and do it. And the room was quiet. And Jay realized, now Jay, you can see the wheels are spinning. Now he's realizing what he said and what he's done. And it's Wayne Gretzky, you don't do that kind of stuff. And Wayne didn't last long. In maybe 10 or 15 seconds, he picked the stuff up and he laughed. He says, come on, let's go. And he tapped Jay on the pads or whatever. But it was hilarious because he just, and Jay knew better. And Jay knew the situation. He's just frustrated, but it was pretty funny.
I'm surprised if you were in that room after Jay said that he didn't like Wayne Gretzky's 4 minute shift, that you would have said, Wayne, I thought you should have taken 5.
It was one of those moments. I also got there was one of those moments you wanted to savor.
So, based on the Pierre LaRouche quote about, if they wanted him to back check, they would give him $250,000. So if the Rangers would have given you an additional $250,000, would you have been a 12 to 15 goal scorer every year?
They would have had to buy me a new pair of hands too. That's what
yeah. Well, anyway, as usual, we've gone into overtime on this, but it is the playoffs, so we're allowed to do that. But we appreciate you listening, and we'll be back next week when I'm sure we're going to have a lot of things to talk about. The playoffs have really been terrific, I think.
And we're going to cover some of those trades that are happening too. We'll get on that Pittsburgh Toronto trade too. So, all right, guys, we'll see you on Monday.